Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Preview Show, Week 13. It's getting to the nitty gritty of the season. It's getting to when people can push for the playoffs. Adam, we've had one game in the books. It was the Bills at the Patriots, 24-10 to the Bills. It's kind of a must-win game for the Bills, wasn't it? Trying to push to win that division. Let's have a little quick chat about the first game.
I kind of felt like it was a bit of a must-win game for both, really. It's like, they're both in that position. I know that I suppose we don't really expect the Patriots to qualify for the playoffs, really. I know they've done okay, but they're kind of a bit of a 500 team. So we don't really expect it as much as the Bills. But yeah, I think the Bills just look that bit stronger and not quite sure what the Patriots are doing on offense at the moment. I think we're starting to see the downfall of maybe the Matt Patricia decision of bringing him in. So yeah, it's not great, and I think they're not far away, but I think this year they won't be in the playoffs now.
Well, if any of the rumours that went around this week are true about Tom Brady going back, do you think he'll claw back all his old coordinators as well and get some good people out of retirement?
I don't know who comes up with these things. From what I can gather, from what I've watched, it seems very much like it was a guy who works for the Athletic who's kind of connected the dots and gone, like, his contract's up, they're struggling. Oh, why doesn't he come back? And yeah, I can't see it. I can't see Brady wanting to go back there. Surely, if he's going to play on and he's going to move away from the Bucs, surely he's going to go somewhere where you feel like they're in win now mode, because otherwise, what's the point? And I don't really feel like the Patriots necessarily are.
Yeah, I just see the 49ers going all in on him next year.
Yeah, well, possibly, or maybe a team like the Raiders. That's a team that you could see them doing something, because they're going to need to make a splash. So yeah, I could see that as well. But yeah, 49ers definitely.
Right, let's jump straight into today's games. First up on my list, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, a bit of a this early games not great again. A lot of these, I think personally, I think the Steelers will be strong enough just because of that defense. I think that gets them a long way. Don't really know about Najee Harris, whether he's going to play or not. It seems like it's going to be a bit of a game time thing. If not, Jaylen Warren is fit and has practiced the last couple of days. So, to be honest, whoever, if Najee's the game time decision, then 11-10, he's a good price. Jaylen Warren is 6-5. So they're both quite short, but at the same time, they're going to be the main guy, whatever happens. So I do like that. Quite like the under in this game, to be honest. I don't see that many points in it. Although they both struggle, I see the run game kind of taking over a bit here. The Falcons are 27th when it comes to giving up rushing touchdowns. Steelers are pretty good against the run, but I think that the Falcons, without Kyle Pitts now, there's not a lot there. And also Mariota is not exactly the greatest when it comes to, passing the ball out. So it's a really difficult one for bets. I think the Steelers will win it. I quite like the look of Warren if he does get the main game. On the Falcons side, obviously a lot of people are going to be looking at Drake London now. I think he's 9-4, which is a decent price for him. But personally, I'd rather go for a slightly bigger price on a punt, because I think that's really what it's going to be for the Falcons. You got Damiere Byrd at 9-2, got a touchdown last week, and then Zacchaeus, who at 3-1, I think is another one worth having a look at, because someone's going to have to get the ball. Because if they're not going to be able to run it, then it's going to have to be somewhere. Not too keen on Patterson in this game, just because I think the Steelers are pretty strong against the run. And I know he gets a lot of passing work, but I just don't see many points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. It could be a bit of a coin flip game. This one could be, but equally, I agree with you. I think the Steelers, I think the matchup favors them. I think they're Steelers have got a great defense, and when they're coming up against a team like the Falcons, who are very, very one-dimensional, they know it's going to be heavily run game, especially now, as you said, they've lost Kyle Pitts, so it is just Drake London. So if it's going to be heavy run, the defense only need to focus on stopping the run, really, don't they? And I think if the Steelers defense, as good as it is, only needs to focus and zone in on one thing, it elevates their team and makes them better. And on the other side of the ball, I feel like last week, Kenny Pickett, they've started to find what works for him and how he can move the ball, not quickly down the field, but move the ball down the field. And I think that works quite well. They've got some talented receivers there. So I think they'll play to his strengths. The run game seems to work without Najee. It has all season. There's parts where other guys have come in and managed to carry the ball and do well. So I'm not worried if Najee's not playing. They'll still be able to get something going. So yeah, I think the Steelers edge this one, but yeah, definitely not a high scoring game if it's going to be mainly run scoring. So yeah, I'm going to stick with the Steelers for that one too. On to the next game. It's could be an interesting one. The Packers at the Bears.
Yeah, I think it's. I think this could be actually a decent one now that we know that Justin Fields seems to be fit and is going to play. I think that was the one that if he hadn't have started, if he was out injured, that would have really sort of knocked a lot of the fun out of this game, I think, to be honest. On the Bears side, I think you've got to look at Fields and Montgomery. I think they're the two you've got to look at. Fields is 6-4 to get a touchdown. Montgomery's 6-5. Really like both of them in this game. I think the Packers have shown that you can run on them in the last few weeks. The defense, as I've said for however many weeks, fickle is the word. A lot of the time you're thinking, why aren't they doing it? Why aren't they doing it? But I have to say, after a few weeks of listening to what's going on, there's a bit of unrest amongst the players in the defense from what we can tell. It seems very much that the problem is the coaching, that Joe Barry is just leaving them so far away from the players that there's just no pressure. And so it's just really easy for teams to score on them. And that's why they're giving up so many points at the moment. So yeah, I think you've got to look at Fields and Montgomery as the two. There's not really anything in the passing game for the Bears that I particularly like. Now that Mooney's out for the season, there's just nothing really there. So yeah, I think them two for the Bears. And then for the Packers, I think there is some that's worth having a look at. I think, the Bears are 31st when it comes to giving up rushing touchdowns. So Aaron Jones is probably a must, really. He's even money. So again, not a great massive price, but still double your money on it. So I think Aaron Jones is definitely worth a look at. And then you just have to stay in the flames with Christian Watson. You have to, because you just don't know if it's going to end. And the other thing is with him is that you've seen that not only has it worked with Rodgers, it also worked with Jordan Love when he came in, and it wasn't a massive pass from Love or anything like that. It wasn't anything spectacular, but Watson's got that pace that can just get past defenders. So at 13-8, he's definitely worth a look at. And I think, one of the better bets of this week. I like the over. I think over 44.5 at the moment at 10-11. I think that's a good shout. And, I will hope that the Packers might actually win us a game for a change. But I think this is the one now for Green Bay. It's almost like they want to win this game because it's the Bears. Everyone's going to be a lot more sort of up for it because it's the Bears. And I think, to be honest, this is pretty much the end of the season really for them, where it's almost like win this game, go on by, and then I think that you might find that Jordan Love comes in and that's it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, playing the Bears is almost like a game that is a must-win game every year for you, isn't it? You can't be losing that. So there's a lot to play for you in this, even if the season's gone. Do you think there's any? I've followed Justin Fields, think he's talented, think he's great, but I'm struggling to find a lot of information about him playing this Sunday, other than it saying, "Oh, he's going to play"? Do you think there's any fuel in saying that there's a chance he couldn't play, and they've just said he's going to play, so the Packers set up their whole defense on what we're going to do to, the all practice all week. They're going to be looking at how they can stop Fields. I think there's any fuel in them not playing him and saying, we're going to rest him, because if a separated shoulder, it's not his throwing arm, it's still a separated shoulder, and he's a running quarterback. If he damages that anymore, you're going to affect his progression, like off the field for the off season. Would you risk playing him, or do you think he's definitely playing?
So it would seem like a bit of a stupid decision to play him if he was injured, at all. Because let's face it, the Bears aren't going to the playoffs this year.
Well, he is injured, isn't he? He 100% is injured.
But I suppose there's injured and then there's injured sort of thing in the NFL, isn't there? This is the thing. So it's like, I suppose it depends how bad it is. I think they want to put him out there because it's the Packers. I think they genuinely feel that if they had him out there, they've got a good chance of winning this game, and they want to make a statement in that way. And they know that the Packers are wounded and they're not playing well and stuff like that. So I think because of that, they probably want to put him out there. But I suppose at the end of the day, all you can really judge it on is the fact that he's been in full practices as well.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you have to kind of go on the fact that he's going to play. As I said, if he doesn't play, forget the over, and obviously forget him getting a touchdown. It will be all Montgomery. So that's probably where it's at. But yeah, I'd be surprised if he didn't, given that he's practiced the last couple of days.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, last week we said that Mike White playing against the Bears was a perfect game for him to play against. And then we saw a lot of it because it was on red zone really early. Wide receivers just looked open all over the place for the Jets last week. So Rodgers must be rubbing his hands thinking, if Mike White can find receivers that are just running around by themselves, then he's going to have a big game and be loving this. So,
well, he's probably only rubbing one hand because he's got a broken thumb, so maybe not so much. But yeah, I mean, you have to look at Watson. Romeo Doubs apparently is coming back he's going to be in for a little bit, they're saying. So there's him as well, and obviously Alan Lazard is there. So Randall Cobb as well. Yeah, there's guys there. You have to feel that's why I feel that if the Bears are there, you have to Fields is there even, then you have to think the overs are a good chance.
Definitely, yeah. I think as you said as well, I think Rodgers is going to come in here and just try and have a massive game and bolster his stats, and then, like you say, maybe go, I'm just going to sit out now and let Love take over for the rest of the season. So perfect game for him to play, really. On to the next game. We are another interesting. Wow, the early games really are a humdinger, aren't they? The Jags against the Lions.
In fairness, I actually think this is probably the most exciting game of the 6 p.m. games. Not because anything's going to come from it, as in the playoffs or anything, but you've got two teams who I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think we're in for an exciting one here. The over-under's 51, which tells you that they think it's going to be an exciting game as well. I like it to get it. I think you want to be backing a lot of these guys. I think they've got a really good chance. On the Lions side, they're 32 against rushing touchdown, 25 against passing touchdown. They are, as I've said so often, awful at defense. But the Jags, to be honest, although they're pretty decent against the run game, they are struggling a bit against the pass as well. So, there are points to be put up here. I do, obviously, Jamal Williams. Everyone, he seems to be getting the goal line work. So he's 10 to 11. He's a bit short. But I do think that you have to start looking at DeAndre Swift again now. Swift is starting to get more involved. He's 6 to 4, so he's a bigger price, decent price for Swift. And I think he had 8 targets last week. And the Jags do struggle against pass catching running backs. That's one area that they do suffer against. So I really like Swift at 6 to 4. Really like St. Brown. Every week we say that we really like Amon-Ra, 11 to 10. I think that's a really good price for him as well. I think he's, especially when the Lions are at home, I think Amon-Ra, if you can get him at odds against now, it's a decent price for him. So I really like them. On the other side, we just spoke about how bad the Lions defense is against all parts of the game. We were talking on the fantasy show about Travis Etienne, JaMychal Hasty. I think that Etienne is back. It sounds like he's fit and he's practiced most of the week. So I think him at 4 to 5. And then Christian Kirk, he's the main wide receiver there at 5 to 4. And to be honest, he's the only one really that kind of gets the touchdowns. It's like Zay Jones doesn't normally get the touchdowns. He's normally more of a sort of move the chains kind of guy. And Marvin Jones pops up every now and then, but it's a bit of a risk. So, yeah, I think Christian Kirk at 5 to 4 is good. I like the Jags for it. I think their defense is just that bit better, and that will help them. And we saw last week with Trevor Lawrence that at the end of that game, to win that game, I think that's huge. That really is, and that's going to make a big difference. And there was the video of the safety. I can't remember his name. The safety at Jacksonville, basically just going on about, well, he didn't even have a rookie year. He was stuck with Urban Meyer. It was atrocious and all that sort of thing. And just how pumped up they are for Doug Peterson, and just sort of like they're really behind him, despite the fact that their record doesn't show a particularly great team. But we were saying they're not far off. They're really not. And yeah, I think they'll just about nick it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that they're playing the Lions this week, because you could almost say that the Jags this season are the Lions of last season.
Yeah.
Where they were interesting to watch. They were good to watch. They were in a lot of games. They were lost by just a field goal on a lot of them. And I feel like that's where we are with the Jags. But I feel like the talent that they've got now, they can kick on and they can find another gear, because I think that's the difference between these two teams. Lions play with heart and grit and push through games, but the talent just isn't as strong as what I believe that the Jags have got. So I think that's where they'll edge them out. And if anybody saw the fantasy show on Thursday night, Adam, you picked Trevor Lawrence, Etienne, and Christian Kirk all as your must start. So we posted that out and it went down like a storm. Everyone was like, we fully agree, start them all. So I think the nation as well is kind of on the Jags side with this one. As you said, the coming of age game for Lawrence, I think that mentality to take into this game as well is only going to help massively. And I think you're really right with what you're saying about DeAndre Swift. I've noticed that over the last couple of weeks, they tend to play the first half with Williams, and then towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter, it's a lot of Swift. And I've noticed that's when he's been getting the touchdowns as well. So even if he doesn't start and he's not in there and he's not working the game in the first half, I've still got a load of faith in it. It seems to be a tactic they seem to be using. So, yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with the Swift comment there. I didn't even know you were going to say it was something I was going to bring up. On to the next game. This one is a bit more interesting. There's a bit more about this one. It's the New York Jets at the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, this one's kind of got a bit more sort of, it's more relevant to the playoffs and what's going to happen in the next few weeks than the previous games. I think it'd be a really interesting game, this one, because although the Vikings are at home, that Jets defense is just so strong against everything. I mean, they're tied third against passing touchdowns. You have to, I mean, whoever the producer is of that game, they have to have a camera on Justin Jefferson and Sauce Gardner. Just leave the camera on them, because it's going to be fascinating to see how Gardner deals with someone like Jefferson, because he's never gone up against anyone like him. So I think that's going to be a really interesting battle between the two. Obviously, Jefferson at 21 to 20 is a good price. Like I was saying with Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you can get him odds against now, it's a good price, because Jefferson does score touchdowns. It is a tough defense he's up against. That is obviously the case, but even still, Jefferson is just that good. So I quite like Jefferson. Little bit out on everyone else, to be honest, with the Vikings. I just don't. I think that defense is just so strong. So that there's too many sort of like, you can't guarantee anything with the rest of them. Really like Garrett Wilson for the Jets. I think with Mike White there, I think you're seeing a lot more passing of the ball and certainly a lot more accurate throwing last week than what we had with Zach Wilson. So at 2-1, I think that the Jets are all right. And the Vikings defense is one of them defenses where it's not great, but it's okay. It's kind of middle of the road. And so you can score on them. And if White can match what he did last week, then that will work. Unfortunately, as we saw last year, that wasn't the case, and he really struggled to match that. So I think that's the issue there. But yeah, really like Garrett Wilson at 2-1, and then it seems like Knight is going to get the start at running back. He's 13-10. Saw what he could do last week. He looks like a decent player, and I mean, anyone with a nickname like Bam, you gotta go for him, haven't you? So yeah, but it's difficult. I normally go for the defensive side of the game when it comes to who wins. I just feel like if your defense is that strong, it's going to be very difficult. But I do feel like the Vikings I think the Vikings have got something going at the moment. And when you've got a player like Jefferson, I just think that'll make the difference. So I do think the Vikings will probably win it. And I don't know if Mike White will be able to do what he did last week.
Yeah, he's definitely. It's a whole different ball game for Mike White this week, isn't it? It's not the same team he's going up against. But equally, this is a tough one to evaluate because for me, I mean, on the main show, I was talking about the Jets and how I felt like they were just a quarterback away from being a great team and they could push on and maybe do something in the playoffs with that defense they've got. But on paper, they look fantastic. They look better than the Vikings, but the Vikings just seem to know how to win games at the minute. They're just, there's been plenty of games this week I've watched them and gone like, I'm not sold on them with their record that they've got. I don't think they're as good as their record, but they keep proving me wrong and they keep winning. And it is Jefferson. It's just Jefferson as well, isn't it? He's, insane catches all over the field just to push them through and win games. Whereas there's lots of guys playing well at the Jets and lots of people now coming into their own and looking good. I'm really struggling to call this one, but I can't not go with the Vikings just based on the fact they keep proving me wrong and they keep finding a way to win. And when you're having a season like that, it works for you. So I think I'm going to stick with them just in case. But yeah, I generally think the Jets have got something going. They think on paper they're probably better than the Vikings. So I think
next year, definitely next year for the Jets is going to be huge. If they can get themselves a good quarterback in there, they need to make the move to probably a veteran, almost like a Jimmy G kind of guy. If they could get someone like that in there, then they would be flying.
Yeah, because they'll get their running backs back. Breece Hall will be back. Michael Carter will be back. Bam Knight, if he's good. They've got a nice little committee back there, nice receivers. So Jimmy G doesn't need to be distributing the ball like Mahomes or Josh Allen, does he? Just needs to lead the pack, be strong for them, like we always know he is. On to the next game. We are the Commanders at the New York Giants.
Yeah, a bit of a rough one. This one could be. I think this has got under written all over it. I have to say, the line is 40.5 at 10-11. I still think this has got 19-16 written all over it. This game. The Commanders' defense is it's stepped up big time in the last few weeks, and I don't see that changing. You've got Chase Young back now, fully fit as well.
Is he definitely fully fit for this week?
I think he's meant to be playing. That's what they're saying. He might not be in all the time, but he is meant to be playing a bit. So I think that they look so good without him. So imagine what they're going to look like with him, kind of thing. They're third against rushing touchdowns. Now this is a big problem because for the Giants, it's pretty much Saquon Barkley, to be honest, as their main weapon. So when you're that strong against the run, that is going to be a really big problem for the Giants. Having said all that, when you look at the Giants and who they've got, he's kind of the only one that you're really that interested in, but he's odds on at 20-21, and it's too short. That's the problem with Barkley. So I just feel like he's too short to go for. I don't really like anyone else. I mean, you tell me. I mean, is there anyone else? Because I mean, I know Slayton has looked all right, but against this defense, it's a real risk.
It's hit and miss with them, isn't it? And they're never consistent with who they throw the ball to. This is the problem we've had with them. Even when they had other players fit, one game there'd be a hot hand and they'd be good. The next game it'd be someone else. There's never any consistency of any of them. Really, Richie James has been probably the most consistent, but struggled with injuries, not in all the time. I think Slayton is your best bet of the one being able to do the business. I think there's some chatter about Bellinger possibly having some snaps and playing this week. We saw what he did, and he was great for red zone. So if he is playing, I think Bellinger's probably a good shout to maybe get in the end zone if that is the case. If it's not Saquon that's going to be running it in the red zone, so that's probably where you sat at that one.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel that in a low scoring game, this is the problem. There's just not really a lot to go for. So you kind of put off with all of them. But yeah, I mean, Bellinger, if he is back, then that is someone that might be worth having a look at. On the Commanders side, Gibson has got the foot injury. He only played 42% of snaps last week, so it feels like it's he has practice, in fairness, but we don't know if he's going to be completely okay. Probably not for this game. So Brian Robinson at 5-4 feels like a good shout. And then the only one really, because the Giants are actually 7th against passing touchdowns, they're pretty good at shutting them down. Curtis Samuel at 21-10, just purely because the guy's got speed and he uses a lot of the jet sweeps and he's in them sort of plays. You do sort of wonder whether he might be able to do anything. But yeah, the likes of McLaurin and, I mean, Jahan Dotson, since he's been back, has done nothing. I don't know, it just doesn't really feel like much in like I said, a low scoring game. So yeah, not really a lot there. I just think the Commanders will nick it just purely because that defense is just so strong at the moment, and they seem to be on a bit of a run as well. That's the other thing. It feels like the trajectory of these two teams are going completely different ways at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's the informed team with all the momentum versus the team that the wheels seem to have fallen off and they don't look like the same team they started off with. But are you going to when you've had that many injuries? It's just it's a revolving door of players at the moment. But having said that, for the first time this year, there's a strong possibility we might see Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari on the field at the same time, which is what we hoped at the start of the season. And if they do all play and they all stay fit through this game, fingers crossed, then we might see a different defense from us. And I personally, from what I've been reading, don't think Chase Young is going to play. And right. Cole Holcomb's on IR. So you've lost for me, your best two defenders there on the Commanders side of the ball. And I think this game, it's definitely a 3-point game, isn't it? Either way, just like last year, it's going to come down to a field goal that splits these two. I agree with you on that one. I think it's going to come down to turnovers because Heineke, although he's been good in there and he's really commanded the position for them, he has a tendency to have a couple of wayward turnovers, whether it's fumbles or interceptions, and Daniel Jones hasn't had anywhere near the amount that he's had in previous years, and he's kind of managed to keep that. So I think that's where it might come down to, and it's where, as an optimistic Giants fan, I think we might be able to push through and win this game, because it's a game that the Giants are going to want to win just because of the opponents. Take away the fact that both of them are playing for playoff positions. It's still a divisional rivalry. It's maybe not got as much clout as the Eagles and the Cowboys games for the Giants, but still, it's for me. You're gonna, if you can't get up for these games, then what games can you? So we looked good against the Cowboys for a half. So I think there's positive to be taken from last week and moved into this week, playing Washington and not as good as the Cowboys at the moment. So. Definitely a 3-point game. Couldn't call which way it's going to be. I'm going to side with the Giants just because I'm going to be supporting them. On to the next game. It's the Tennessee Titans at the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, so I think that this one, I was having a look at it on the Titans side. There's Derrick Henry, and that's it. There isn't really anything else, is there? He's 4-5, which actually isn't a bad price for Henry, which sounds weird, but it's actually a decent price for Henry. He's normally shorter. So yeah, Derrick Henry at 4-5, I think, is decent. The Eagles' defense, although you've seen them struggle against the run a little bit, which is why I'd say Henry, they're still pretty good against the pass. They're not bad really as an overall defense. They're not the best, but they're doing okay. The Titans are actually number one against rushing touchdowns, so they really lock that down a lot, and I think that's going to be a bit of an issue for the Eagles, who run the ball a lot. I don't like Sanders in this game at all because of that. I just think they're going to stop that. But I do think that Hurts he's just good enough now. You're starting to see that it's not just about the run game. He's shown this season that he can pass the ball effectively as well. And that you're going up against the Titans defense that are ranked 28th against passing touchdowns, so they can go over the top. I really, really like AJ Brown at 6-5. I think he's a really good bet for this one. Devonta Smith, there's talk about him being out because of that. He's got a groin injury, so we don't know if he's going to play. I think that kind of, with Goddard out as well, kind of brings Hurts rushing into it even more. So I do think he will rush the ball quite a bit. He's 11-10 anytime, so I like that. But if you want one at a bigger price that I quite like the look of, and he has been getting involved a bit more, is Quez Watkins. So he's kind of got the speed. He's 11-4. So I think that he's got a chance against a defense who struggle to deal with passing touchdowns. And so therefore, I think that Watkins is worth having a look at. I wouldn't say he's my top bet, but I think he's definitely one to look at. And yeah, I think the Eagles will win it. I don't think it will be a massive win by any stretch. I think it will be quite close because the Titans do have, they keep themselves in the game all the time. I can see this being very similar to the Titans game against the Chiefs, when the Chiefs won it in overtime by 3 points. I think that's the kind of game that we've got here. But yeah, I think the Eagles will win it, and yeah, really like AJ Brown at 6-5.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'd be as close. Titans, we said last week, Titans always manage to find a way to win a game. Their coach is absolutely excellent. He manages to set himself up so well against any opposition. But yeah, I feel like now the Eagles are through their wobble, if you like. You know, there was that time where everyone was like, oh, can they be unraveled? Is it going to work for them? They bounced back and they managed to get some victories. And I think they've pushed themselves through that kind of like, this was the time where it could have gone, the wheels could have fallen off. And they got through it fairly unscathed. So I think they'll push on now. And they're such a tough team to play, because if you are setting up to stop the run, because they're predominantly run, they'll burn you with the wide receivers they've got. You know, all of them are performing to a good level. One of them takes it in turns to step up, don't they? If AJ Brown is taking a backseat, it's Smith that steps up. And like I said, we've seen Watkins stepping up over the last few weeks as well. So I just think there's they're hard to come up with a game plan, because they can change during the game to fit where it's going. So yeah, it's going to be a good battle between the coaches. I think this one is. It's going to that's going to be the interesting side of this. So if you're new to American football, it might be a little bit like, what's going on? But I think the Eagles will nick this one as well. I just think there's more talent across the field. You can't just be Derrick Henry, can you? That's, you know, it's worked in the past. And on to the next game. It's a bit of a weird one. It's not an exciting game. It's not an interesting game, but I think it's going to be another close one. It's the Denver Broncos at the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I think we're starting to go into a couple of games now that are a bit rough around the edges, shall we say? Yeah, I really struggled to kind of find anything in this game other than the under, to be honest. The Broncos and Ravens, the total at the moment is 40. I think the under for that is very, very doable. So at 10-11, I quite like the look of that. On the Ravens side, I think they'll win, the Ravens. I just think that for whatever reason, their offense isn't clicking very well at the moment. I don't quite know why or what's going on there. It just feels like it should be better than what it is. Mark Andrews is 6-5. He's back, so I think that's a good thing. A lot of people are looking at Gus Edwards this week because he's meant to be back fully fit, but I don't know at the moment with him and Kenyon Drake. It's just a little bit. Who knows who's going to get the playing time? So that's a bit of a concern. And then receiver-wise, we've spoken about over the last couple of weeks with Rashad Bateman out. There just isn't really anyone that good, and it feels like they've really let themselves down not bringing someone in. On top of that, they're playing against the best defense in the league, to be honest. They are number one against passing touchdowns, tied fourth against rushing touchdowns. They just don't give a lot up. And considering how poor the Broncos offense is, it's amazing that they've still got the enthusiasm to be that good, to be honest. Because you look at the Broncos, and I mean, you've got Latavius Murray there, and the only reason that I'm mentioning him at 7-4 is because we know that he's going to get most of the running game. That's what we know. So therefore, it kind of is a little bit worth it. But then again, he's going up against a defense that's pretty good against rushing touchdowns, ranked at 11. So it's really difficult. I was looking at the wide receivers on the Broncos, and the smallest price is 3-1. That's how ridiculous it is. That is the smallest. Cortland Sutton is 3-1. Judy's like 137-2, and then is it Kendall Hinton? Isn't it? I think he's around the same sort of price. That's how bad it is that they're offering them kind of prices for these guys. You can't back them. You just can't, because Russell Wilson is just showing week in, week out that he just can't do it. And so it's reached that point where there's really nothing to go for in this game other than the under. That's the only bet that I really like is under 40. But yeah, I think the Ravens will win it. They're +9 on the spread, which feels, I mean, the fact that you're giving the Broncos a 9-point head start, it feels quite a lot for two teams that are just not really doing it at the moment. So, but then at the same time, I can't see the Broncos scoring much. So yeah, I'll go for the Ravens, but I won't be watching it.
Yeah, you said that Murray's the best chance of getting in the end zone. They've got to get near the end zone for him to get in. That's the worry, because he's definitely, once he's down there, he will get it in. But yeah, the Ravens, their run game this year just hasn't really got going because it's been the carousel of running backs of injuries for them, isn't it? And that's the thing with the Ravens. Greg Roman is such a good offensive coordinator. And I give him props for what he's done at the Ravens with the 3 tight end set and using the run game heavily. No one's been managed to stop it, even though the Ravens turn up with that game plan every single week. It only gets stopped when they've got the injuries and when they're not getting. And the trouble is, once they haven't got the run game going, they've got no answer. Have they? Yeah. Once that doesn't work, there's no we haven't got the run game going. The guys aren't really getting it done. They're not fit enough. What's our game plan now with throwing? There is no answer. And that's where I think it's going wrong for the Ravens this year, and why they're not performing on a higher level than what we thought, because once you take that away, it really struggles. And the Broncos, we can't really say much more, can we? Who'd have thought at this point of the season we'd be saying that Russell Wilson can't get the ball to Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton? None of us were predicting that. But yeah, props to their defense. They're incredible. And like we've said, if their defense is that good, what answer have the Ravens got to it? So there's a chance that either team could win this game. There is a chance that the Broncos could actually win this. But I'm going to stick with the Ravens. They're the ones with the record most worth playing for. And I think Lamar Jackson, I believe in him, and I think he's very talented. And I just don't think he'll want to lose. And that not wanting to lose is more than the want to win on the offensive side of the ball for the Broncos. So, I think it's going to be Lamar Jackson scrambling around and finding some magic that we used to see from Russell Wilson. So, I'm going to stick with the Ravens for that one as well. On to the next game. This might be an interesting one to watch, and I think there'll be a lot of people rooting for the home team. It's the Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans.
It's a double revenge game, isn't it? It's like Watson wants revenge, the Texans want revenge, everyone wants revenge. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Although I don't think it will necessarily be interesting for the football, I have to say. I was having a look at this. I've always had a go at the Texans that they're easy to run on. You know, that's something that we've always come out and said all season. We've actually found a team that's worse. The Browns are statistically worse to run on. They give up more rushing touchdowns than the Texans. I really like Damian Pierce because of that. So at 6-5, I think he's a good shout for the Texans. Quite like Nick Chubb for the Browns. Obviously, he's very short at 4-7, but I probably wouldn't be backing him because he's so short, but I think he'd probably get in. And then also, you kind of have to, although, you know, none of us particularly like it, you kind of have to go down the fact that there is a strong chance that Deshaun Watson could get a rushing touchdown. You know, he has the legs, and that's something which I think you might find that it's not going to be as great for him as what I think a lot of people think it's going to be. He's not going to suddenly just come back and be amazing. It's like he hasn't been hit for 2 years. You know, this is the thing. It's like it's going to take a lot. So I do wonder whether he will rely on his legs a little bit, and that is something you might go for. So at 15-8, he's a price. Whether you want to back him or not is another thing, but he is a price to look at. I do think the Browns will win it just because I think the Texans are just so bad, and they are sort of tanking without officially tanking a little bit. So I do think because of that, you go for the Browns side of it. I like the under. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as what they think. It's at 46.5 at 10-11. I quite like the under for it. I think it'll be tight as well. So I quite like the +8 for the Texans as well. I think that's something that you could get on. I've done that a few times where it just feels like the scores are just too heavily weighted against them. They might be bad, but they're not going to do nothing. So I think there's that as well. And then I suppose just purely for you, we have to go back on Akins again, don't we? After the 13-2 winner last week, he's now 6-1 for this week. I mean, you know, stay in the flames, get on Andrew's bet. So, you know,
he's always going to get the targets. Is what I told you. They always look for him. They always use him. He's too big of a guy not to throw the ball at when you're struggling to move the ball downfield because he's just that big. So yeah, he's always worth a stab. What's that for? Anytime 6-1.
Anytime 6-1. Yeah.
I mean, it's worth it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you can use your profit from last week to have another go. So you know,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's really hard to evaluate this game with what's at stake for in terms of like publicity for it and what's gone on off the field. I think we might see more from the Texans purely because of that. And it would be a bit of a fairy tale story if they did win.
Yeah.
So I'm going to root them, but despite the fact he's not played and he's not been hit, he's going to be working to like full maximum potential. You know, what can you do if you can't play football? All you can do is work out, be in the best shape of your life. Because no one's hitting you, no one's injured. You've got no knocks, no tiredness, no stiff muscles. He's going to be in peak.
Yeah, he will be. It's purely game time decision making, isn't it, and stuff like that. And then making sure that you're as good as you can be and things like that. I mean, I think that's the problem. It's like, because at the end of the day, it's all well and good practicing all the time, but when you've got the Houston Texans D-line, who are probably pretty angry at this guy, will be more than happy to knock him. Expect maybe a couple roughing the passer penalties coming out in this game. So but that's the reason why I feel like you can't back Amari Cooper, you can't back Donovan Peoples-Jones, because you don't know if it's going to go according to plan. And like I say, I think it'll be under anyway. So yeah, I think because of that, that's why. But yeah, I still think they'll win. I think the Browns will win it. I think he'll do enough to make it look like he's still capable. Of course he will, but I just don't think it's going to be the Deshaun Watson that everyone seems to think it's going to be. So.
Yeah, it's not going to be peak NFL condition, but I think Freddie's one for this was a sleeper bet on having Kareem Hunt, wasn't he? Thought there's going to be some value there if he can't get it downfield and needs to dump it off early. So
I like the logic of it. I think he's right with that. My only concern with it is that Hunt's just not getting in the game. But maybe that'll change now that Watson's there. So that's something that I feel like you need to look at, watch this game and see if that does happen and if his snaps come up. And then if it is further on, then you go for it.
Next game up is the Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Rams. Can the Seahawks top this division? Can they get another win?
I think they can. I think they will win. I don't think they'll top the division because I think the 49ers are there. But yeah, I think they'll win this game. The Rams, the defense is still doing okay, but Aaron Donald's out, isn't he, for this game? So that's a big loss for them.
First time ever, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. Which, you kind of get the feeling whether this might be the beginning of the end a little bit for Donald.
Maybe he's not injured. You know, we've got Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford. Now Aaron Donald will go, "Nah, we're injured. We can't play."
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, it's all gone wrong at the Rams. No one's going to be playing. There's nothing on the Rams that I particularly like, to be honest. I don't think they'll score a lot of points. I quite like the under again at 41. I think that's definitely worth it because I just feel like the Seahawks are just going to run on them. You know, this is the thing. I think they'll just go down for. I think it'll be quite a quick game because of that. I like Walker at 4-5, although he is odds on. I think it's definitely one that's worth looking at. He got in. You know, he didn't do much in the rushing game last week, but he still got 2 touchdowns. So I think he's still going to be a touchdown threat. So at 4-5, I like. I mean, you know, you've got Metcalf and Lockett. They're very short, like very, very short at the moment. They're kind of like even money, 6-5, that kind of price. The Rams are like, you got to remember that most of the Rams' problems are on the offense and not on the defense, to be honest. And so they've still got a lot of their defensive players out there. And because of that, you just sort of think they're very short prices considering who they're going up against a Rams defense that, you know, that they're not great, but they're pretty decent. And so Walker's the only one that I really like the look of. And the under, that's pretty much it, to be honest.
Now, even if this game is a complete blowout, Seahawks win it, you know, there's a possibility that the Rams are going to get in the end zone, isn't there? Even if it's just for one touchdown. And you've said everybody's injured and you said everybody's gone. I watched their game last week and noticed that they had some of their rookies out there, some of the guys that look good in preseason. You got the odds in front of you. Can you just tell me what the odds are on Lance McCutcheon anytime touchdown scorer?
I can't, no.
What, because he's not on there?
He's not on there.
Wow. Probably the best wide receiver of the preseason and played last week and had a shot in the end zone. He didn't quite keep hold of it, but I think we're going to see the likes of him, Tutu Atwell and Kyren Williams seeing a lot more of the ball just to see what they've got for next year.
So Kyren Williams is 7-4. You saw with, I mean, obviously not the same quality, but you saw with Josh Jacobs how you can run on the Seahawks defense last week. So 7-4 for Kyren Williams. You know, like you say, if he's going to get most of it, then that's not necessarily an awful price for him. If you want to go further down, I mean, Tutu Atwell 6-1, Brandon Powell's 15-2. The problem is it's yes, they probably will get in the end zone, but it could be any of them.
It could be,
and this is the problem. You've got no sort of ability to work it out. It's just complete guessing work. And although the Seahawks, Seahawks aren't great defensively, they do give up a lot of touchdowns. So it is It is a weakness. Maybe 2-2 out, well, at 6-1. Maybe that's the punt. You know, you've seen it happen before. So maybe that is the punt, that one there. But I wouldn't get too excited about any of it. I'd rather be on your Atkins one.
Yeah, I was just in my head, I'm thinking there's got to be some big odds in there worth a punt, even if you just wanted a little £2.50 on it or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely worth a stab because there is so many people out. Someone's got to get it. And the odds are just going to be so high on everybody. It's worth having a little look and having a stab. Maybe during the game, maybe do it in play.
Yeah.
See who's on the field, have a little look, because I think the odds will still be there, because I've done it with the Rams before, and the odds are still there during in-play games. So I think it's worth, cash value wise, just having a stab of £2.50 on one of them. Right, on the next one, we are the Miami. Oh, interesting game. This is what you mean. The big games are all in the later, aren't they?
Yeah.
The Miami Dolphins at the San Francisco 49ers.
Firstly, this is disgusting that this is not a primetime game. This is absolutely disgusting. I understand that the NFL will always put the Cowboys there because it's guaranteed viewers and money. I get all of that. But that this game is not a primetime game is disgusting. The over on this is 46.5. The 49ers defense is very, very good, but they are probably going up against one of the most explosive offenses in the league at the moment. And not only that, they have got a hell of a lot of players and a hell of a lot of coaching staff who used to be part of the 49ers, and they know what to do and how to get round it. So I think the over, love it, at over 46.5 in this one. To be honest, I think it's really difficult. I haven't actually put a selection for who's going to win on this. But I do think I'm going to go for the Dolphins on this one, just because I think that sort of like them having that knowledge and having them explosive players, I think is just going to be enough to do it, to get over the line. I really like Tyreek Hill at 11-8. Jalen Waddle is 13-8. He's another one that I like the look of as well. And then Jeff Wilson, I know that Raheem Mostert I think he's back. I think he hasn't practiced fully, but I think he is back. But I do like Wilson at 11-8. I think all of them guys are definitely worth looking at. On the 49ers side, I like, obviously CMC is there at 4-5. He's got a bit of a knee issue, so I don't quite know how much he's going to play, but he seems to be okay. There's been a lot of talk about Jordan Mason getting more reps in, so he's 3-1. He's definitely one worth having a look at because the run game obviously is worth a lot. The Dolphins do struggle against the run. So I think that because of that, you want to look at Mason. Deebo Samuel's out, so that's a big loss for the 49ers offensively. But Brandon Ayuk has looked very good at 11-8. And then the one that I really like the look of, because, you know, I've always come out and said it's the Lions, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks are the ones that you always go against the tight end. We've got another one. The Dolphins are really, really struggling against the tight end as the season's going on. And George Kittle is getting better and better as the season's going on. At 2-1 anytime, I think that's a really good bet to be having. I think it's going to be really tight. I mean, the best thing about the Dolphins is the explosiveness of the wide receivers. And the best thing about the 49ers is their defense against the explosive wide receivers. So I think it's going to be a really exciting, interesting game. With all the coaching stuff as well, it brings more narrative to it. I like Dolphins. I normally side on the defense, but I do think that in this particular one, I think the Dolphins might just have a little bit too much, and losing someone like Deebo Samuel. And if CMC is restricted with the amount that he can do, I just wonder if that might be enough to get the Dolphins to win in a bit of a shootout.
Elijah Mitchell's injured again as well, isn't he? He's out.
Yeah. He's out, isn't he? He's on IR.
He's back on IR again, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's not been great for him, has it? But yeah, I would like to side with the 49ers for this one, surely because they're better across more areas. Whereas for the Dolphins, it is just wide receiver explosiveness, and the defense isn't quite there. They do give up quite a bit of points, and we've had this conversation that these two teams could be the Super Bowl. This came up not that long ago. And when I didn't think the Dolphins were quite that level yet. And when I looked at the teams they'd lost against, it was teams where they had good secondaries and good defenses and forced them to use the run game more. So I think the 49ers can produce that, and the Dolphins may struggle. Equally, how do you call this one when, like you said, they've got half of the coaching staff on their team, plus all of the running backs that used to play on that team as well. So I'm going to stick with the 49ers for this one. They've got a lot of great pieces. It's, you lose Debo, Ayuk and Kittle and CMC both have the ability to have that one big play themselves, don't they? So it's not like some teams where you lose your best player and you're then scrapping around to find someone to step up. The others are equally having good enough seasons to do that, especially Ayuk. I think Ayuk's had a bit of a breakout season and showed his worth of what we all thought he was going to be when he joined that team. So I'm going to stick with the 49ers for this one. But if they do, and it's the Dolphins win, we had the Seahawks winning against the Rams and the 49ers losing to the Dolphins. That means they'll be joint at the top of the table. Closing in. Next game up, another big one. All big games in the evening. It's the Kansas City Chiefs at the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, really exciting game. Obviously, a repeat of the AFC Championship game last year. The Bengals have got Ja'Marr Chase back. Seems like he's going to play. Don't know how much he's going to play. He's 20 to 21, so very short for a guy that you can't be 100% on. Higgins, however, 21 to 20, really like look at Higgins. And then Mixon is still in concussion protocol at the moment, so we don't know if he's going to play. Obviously, P. Ryan has shown that he's done pretty well, but the Chiefs are pretty good against the rush, so it's not really a matchup that I'm particularly keen on. The one that I like the look of really is T. Higgins in this one. I think at 21 to 20, he's the right price, and you've got a Chiefs defense that are 30th against giving up passing touchdowns. Not because they're bad, but just purely because you have to keep scoring on the Chiefs, and the only way you can do it is through passing the ball to keep up with them. I like Kelce, as I always like Kelce for every game, 5 to 6. I think he's worth a look at. And then when you look at the other receivers, it's really difficult with the Chiefs because you just don't know which one it's going to land on. The only one I'm really going to put out, and it's the same as what I did last week, is Justin Watson. I think he's been getting involved a lot more. He's 11 to 5, so he's the biggest price of the lot. But it's a real sort of little punt on it. It's not really anything particularly interesting on that one. And I like the over. It's set at 53. I think this is a shootout waiting to happen. I really do. And I am normally pretty strong on the Chiefs. I have been this season, saying that I think they'll win most games. I think this is one that the Bengals might get them. They beat them in the championship game last year. I think I saw some ridiculous stat of it being something like 40 years since the Chiefs have actually won at the Bengals. They haven't played much, but at the same time, it's like, they just haven't won there. And yeah, I just like the Bengals for this one.
Yeah. Higgins is the one as well, isn't it? I read earlier this week that he, over the last 2 weeks, is the number one wide receiver in the whole of the NFL. Mm-hmm. And he went up against a team that was the 32nd against wide receiver, the 31st against wide receiver, and he's going up against the 26th ranked defense against the wide receiver. So there is no reason why he won't continue to be the number one wide receiver in the whole NFL this week as well and get over 100 yards again for the third week straight. So, and Ja'Marr Chase was fit last week and they chose not to play him. So they obviously chose not to play him when he was fit last week for this game, didn't they? This was
I think that was an obvious thing that they went for. I don't know how much he's going to be involved. I think it will very much depend on how he goes, and I think they'll just have to wait and see. hopefully he doesn't aggravate anything. That's the only problem.
You put him on the field just to run up and down in a straight line, just so people have to mark him. Higgins is wide open then. So good tactic if that's the case, because it will work for them. And I'm in fully agreement with you. I think the Bengals do this one. I've still got a few question marks with the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not fully committed on them yet as being like the best team, despite the fact they're performing well, they're playing well. There's no issues there. There's just a few little cracks for me that doesn't make them the complete package. And I think the Bengals might exploit a few of those areas, as we've just said. So I'm going to go with the Bengals to win this one as well. But I think it's going to be a shootout. I agree with you. That is a good game to watch. I might have that on as well as Red Zone. So next up, it's my team that I think always managed to fluff it against your team that you think always managed to fluff it. It's the Chargers at the Raiders. Which one is going to lose the game themselves?
Well, based on that, it's got to be a tie then, isn't it? Isn't that how it
could be a tie?
And the Raiders like a bit of overtime at the moment, so it could work. I actually feel like this game is pretty easy to work out, to be honest. I think over. I really like the over. You look at the defenses. Chargers 25th against passing touchdowns, 23rd against rushing touchdowns. The Raiders 28th against passing touchdowns and 25th against rushing touchdowns. Basically, both defenses are not very good. Is essentially what we're dealing with here. So I think you're going to be looking at points. So the over 49.5, I like the look of. For the Raiders, you got Josh Jacobs at 4-5, Devontae Adams at 20-21. And then just for Tinch, we got Foster Moreau, who came in last week. We got the Foster Moreau touchdown last week. We will go for it again at 7-4. They're really the three. I mean, there is Matt Collins as well, but he doesn't get involved quite as much. So I think they're the three to look at on the Raiders. On the Chargers side, you got Austin Eckler at 4-5, Keenan Allen, who got the touchdown last week, and I think you can see is actually fit now at 11-8. And then I know Josh Palmer's there, but I feel like now that Keenan Allen is back, he's taking away a lot of the sort of positions where Josh Palmer was scoring and getting yards from. So I do think that will drop a bit. DeAndre Carter, I think at 9-4 is the slightly bigger price that I quite like the look of. He got 10 targets last week, so I think that's definitely one to keep an eye on. And then there is Gerald Everett as well at 15-8, so that one's not too bad. I think any of them could score, to be honest. There's a lot of points in this one. As we've said about the evening games, they look good, they look exciting. It's definitely one for Red Zone with them 3 games all going on at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I like Keenan Allen at the price, 11-8. He's kind of like the main one I like. Who's going to win it? The Raiders seem to, the last couple of weeks, they've got something going now. And I know it's predominantly Josh Jacobs, but you can run on this Chargers defense quite easily. So, yeah, I think it's just going to be a really good game. I think the Raiders might win it. I could see another walk-off overtime win.
Yeah, there's a lot of people backing the Raiders for this one. I've seen a lot on social media saying
the line is strange. It's about 2.5 in their favour. I don't really know why, other than that they're at home.
I mean, if you hadn't have read that, you would say that the Chargers were going to be the somewhat easy winners of this one, wouldn't you? You wouldn't be. Maybe are you now over-evaluating and looking deeper into it just surely because of what the pundits are saying and the odds are saying?
Well, it's a really difficult one. Like I say, -2.5 on the Raiders side it's a strange line. It's one that I'm a little bit like, I don't really get it. To be honest, I don't really have a strong opinion as to who's going to win. I think they're both very evenly matched teams, and both defenses are very poor. So you've got really good chance of scoring lots of points. I think it's a shootout, and it could come down to who has the ball at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think equally, I think the Chargers have struggled with turnovers recently, haven't they? I think they've been putting the ball on the floor a lot. I'm struggling to call it. I mean, I like the Raiders. Prior to you talking about this one, I was on the Raiders side of the fence, but I'm on the Raiders side of the fence because the Chargers are my team that find ways to lose games. So I was going to back the other team. So yeah, I'm in on the Raiders this one. Like you said, they've got a nice combination of Jacobs and Adams. And Carr is more than talented enough to control and command that offense. So if you've got a complement of good run, good pass, something's going to work there for you. I'm just not kind of seeing it, despite the fact that the Chargers have got a plethora of running backs and wide receivers. But
yeah, I think with the Chargers, when you look at it, you look at who's there and you read who's there, you go, that's the better team. You do with the Chargers. They are the better team. But like you say, for whatever reason, they just seem to be able to lose games. And I think a lot of that is down to how bad their defense is. In the same way, with the Raiders, it feels a very similar situation. It's just that they don't have quite as strong depth at the moment because Waller's not there, because Renfro's not there. So it feels like you should go for the Chargers. I'm kind of really only going for the Raiders just because I feel like they're on a bit of a run. They've had 2 games in a row now where they've had walk-off touchdowns in overtime. You know, it just feels like there's a bit of momentum going there. This is what happened with the Raiders last year. You know, they struggled at the beginning, got a bit of momentum towards the end, started doing okay, and then missed out on the playoffs because they were too far behind. It feels very similar that's what they're doing. And they're just going to ride Jacobs and Adams, you know, and just try and do as well as they can. So, yeah, I think the Raiders for that. But, I mean, like I say, wouldn't say I'm confident on either of them, to be honest.
Those two are playing their hearts out as well. You can see it in their face and in their way they play, that Adams and Jacobs literally are putting everything into it. So again, I've said it before, when you've got players like that, that pushes you over the line in tight games. So that could be the difference maker. Just so you know, if you've got a spare pound in it during this hour that we've been chatting, you've come up with a 50-1 bet.
Have I?
Yeah. Kittle, Moreau, and Atkins is 50-1 anytime.
There you
go.
Love a
tight end this week.
There you go. Well, you never know.
Well, you seem confident that they're the tips. We have them.
I wouldn't say I'm confident on Atkins. Atkins is your one.
I mean, you brought him up this week, not me. Okay, it's your primetime game. Colts against Cowboys.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fairly easy win for the Cowboys. I mean, they're minus 10.5 on the spread. I don't know if they'll win it by that much, but I think they'll definitely win this game relatively easily. The Colts are pretty good against passing touchdowns, but they're not as great against the rush. I think Pollard at 10-11 is probably a good bet. You got Zeke at 21-20. Zeke just doesn't seem to be getting quite as many opportunities as Pollard now. So that's a bit of an issue, despite the fact that he's still getting touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb is 21-20 as well. And then the one that I do actually like, to be honest, the most is Dalton Schultz. I like Dalton Schultz at 15-8. I think that he's getting more involved since he's come back. He looks pretty good. And yeah, I think it's a good price for him against a Colts defense that is okay, but they're just not putting the points up. And so I think they'll buckle at some point. The Colts side of it, there's not really a lot, to be honest, that I'm that bothered about. I mean, the Cowboys defense is 4th against rushing touchdowns, 7th against passing touchdowns. They're pretty good. So they're at home. They need to win to keep up, keep away from the others in their division. Pittman is 11-5, but it's a real sort of like, I wouldn't be that confident in it, to be honest. Yeah, I think the Cowboys win it.
I mean, there's got to be one point in the season where if I keep plugging and saying the Colts are going to upset someone, it'll come off.
I don't think so.
Mate. The Cowboys didn't look great against the Giants in the first half. They didn't get anything going whatsoever until they just went, let's just run it. And then once they just went, let's run it, let's use Pollard, let's use Zeke, and just literally sacked off throwing it completely. That then opened up the throwing game, and that predominantly came from the tight ends. A lot of the tight ends and nothing else. So if they come out like that against the Colts, which I think the Colts have still got a really talented defense. They've got the names, they've got the players, they've got the ability there. it might not go the Cowboys' way. Might not. They might struggle through the first half. I think the Cowboys win. I'm not gonna say. I really, really, really just wanted to go. I'm fancying an upset here. I'm gonna say the Colts win it because they've got the ability. They've got the players to beat the Cowboys. Go on, Colts win. Let's have an upset.
Okay.
Just we're at an hour and 9 minutes. No one's listening to me say this now.
That's
they've
true. That is very true.
So I can't be
but
embarrassed.
I will remember. That's all you need.
Unless we take this clip out and put it out online. Don't listen to the show anymore. He's gone crazy. Okay, and then the last fixture, it's definitely worth being put on telly, isn't it? This is a good little ding dong of a game. It's the Saints at the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I don't think it will necessarily be, again, exciting for the football, but I think it will be interesting just because really we all just want to see whether or not Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore get in a fight again. So that's pretty much all this game is. I think it'll be quite low scoring. I think it could get quite nasty at times. I think this game out of all of them. I like the under. It's set at 40.5. I don't see a lot of points in this game at all. On the Bucs side, I like Chris Godwin at 13-8. I think he's getting more involved. I think it's a decent price for him. And then on the Saints side, I like Chris Olave just because he's getting a lot of the ball all the time. And I think, although he hasn't been getting as many touchdowns as what we probably all hoped he had this season, I think he's still showing that he can and that he can get the odd one or two against the Bucs defense that's currently ranked 21st against passing touchdowns. So I think that Olave's a shout. Another team, the Bucs, not great against tight end. Juwan Johnson was 5 out of 5. He didn't get one last week, but he's 9-2. So I think he's probably worth a little look at for him. Does anyone care who wins this game, to be honest? Are any of us watching to see who wins it? We just want to see the fight, don't we? That's all we're into.
Saying that, there's a lot on the line with this game in terms of qualifying for the
playoffs.
Yeah. For two teams that have losing records, you've got one at 5-6 and one at 4-8.
Yeah.
There's a lot riding on this for the playoffs, isn't there? You top that division.
Yeah. I mean, the Bucs need to keep going. They need to get a few more wins under the belt so they can top that division, which really just goes to show how bad that division is at the moment. I mean, there is a bit riding on it for playoff wise, but it's just not. I think the quality just isn't there at the moment. That's the problem. So, yeah, really like Godwin, really like the under.
Yeah, I mean, who did you pick? Did you pick a winner?
Bucs. Go on then. I'll go Bucs just for the sake of it.
Oh, I'm going to go Saints.
Okay, cool. That's how exciting a game this is.
Yeah, I mean, there doesn't need any. We don't even need any logic in this game, do we? We don't need any stats or momentum or who's good against what.
Well, there isn't any.
Which one do you personally want to win? And that's all you need in this game. So
yeah, I don't really want either of them to win. Can we sort that out? That would be nice.
Who do you want to win that division? They're all still in it.
I don't really care. Because genuinely, this is the problem with this division, right? The only thing anyone can come out and say with this division at the moment is that they wouldn't want to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because of Tom Brady. And if Tom Brady's in the playoffs, then he might be able to turn something on. Now, that, I suppose, I get that logic, but that team is not playing well. And they're not suddenly just going to become an amazing team. So if they go up against a team like the Eagles or the Cowboys, I don't see it. So, yeah, you don't want to play him, but at the same time, you're going to be away. Against a team like the Eagles, you are. So how do you win that game? I don't get it. I'm just not that keen on it, sort of thing. And so when it comes to that division, it's just a bit. It's the NFC East of a couple of years ago, isn't it?
It is.
That's what it is.
Really is. But it seems like both Easts are doing well and both Souths are falling off the face of the earth, isn't it? You don't want to be in the South anymore.
No.
Right, look, we've ended on such a high compliment on the NFL there. What a beautiful ending to it. You know, we won't talk about the Cardinals and the Panthers who are on bye week then. So you know, but thanks for joining. Best of luck to your teams, Adam. Have you got, before we sign off? Have you put your trebles out yet? Are they out in the open?
I have. I put them out before we came on. So Christian Watson. For the early games, Christian Watson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and AJ Brown, 11-1. And then for the evening games, we've gone for Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, and Keenan Allen at 10-1. So a little bit shorter than what they were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, low odds this week. We're not.
But you're starting to see that where the patterns have emerged, and you can see where it's going. The bookies are starting to bring in the odds a lot more on these guys, and that these are the guys that you feel have got the best chances to score, and that's why they've reduced it a bit. But they're still worth going for. You
should have enough winnings in the pot to double up on these bets, and if you have a fiver, usually whack a tenner on it. If you have a tenner,
and of course, we do have the 50-1 shot. So you know, stick a quid on that, you'll be well away.
Yeah, why not? Eh? You know,
why not?
If that comes in, it's on there. So I'll be putting it out there. We'll be changing my name to AJ Manning Gambling Better or whatever yours is, Adam the Better. So I'll be taking the credit from now on. But yeah, get on those bets. Adam's done really well this season so far. You know, we're up, as we said, we're up at the moment in terms of pot. So yeah, get on that. And then Tuesday we'll be back, Thursday we'll be back, and then you'll see us again for week 14 preview. Best of luck, guys. Thanks for joining.